Daf Yomi, tractate of Avodah Zarah, page 48a, top of the page with the new Mishnah. Sholosh asherois hein. Ilon shnotem etchila shem Avodah Zarah, ha'izasura. Gidio v'silon shem Avodah Zarah, v'hechlif. Noit l'mashech liv, ha'mid daftei Avodah Zarah, u'notala. Harez muteres. We're at the Mishnah, top of 48. We just said the Mishnah on top of 48a, which is, there are three types of trees that were used as part of idolatrous rites. A tree that one initially planted for the sake of idol worship is forbidden, and one may not derive benefit from any part of the tree. If one lopped off part of the trunk of the tree, or trimmed its branches for the sake of idol worship, meaning to worship that which would regrow there, and the tree trunks or limbs regrew, one removes that which has regrown and burn it. The remainder of the tree is then permitted. If one erected an object of idol worship beneath a tree and subsequently removes it, it is permitted to derive benefit from the tree. And now for the Gemara. The Gemara says, the Mishnah teaches that if one lopped off or trimmed a tree's branches for the sake of idol worship and it regrew, the tree is permitted upon the removal of the new growth. The sages in the school of Yahweh say, and this is the halacha, only when one sank the shoot of a vine into the ground or grafted onto the trunk of the tree itself. The Gemara asks, but didn't we learn that if he lopped off part of the trunk or trimmed the tree's branches, the growth is forbidden? In order to render a tree forbidden, according to the sages of the school of Rabbi Yanai, the act dedicated to idol worship must be sinking or grafting, which are tantamount to replanting the entire tree. The Mishnah indicates that even cutting off part of the tree renders the new growth forbidden. Ela ki itmar itmar Rabbi Yanai v'nyam v'tul itmar da'afat gav d'ivri v'hirgi v'guvay l'elon kinat v'ashech v'shav v'domi d'mahu d'itema כיוון שהבריך והרכיב בגופו של אילן, כאילן שנתו בתחילה דמי, וליצא כולה כמו שמלום. The Gemara answers, rather, with the statement of the sages of the school of Rabbi Yanai was stated. It was stated with regard to the revocation of the idolatrous status. What they meant to say was that even if one sank the shoot of a vine into the ground or grafted onto the tree itself, affecting a more significant change. Nevertheless, when one removes that which has regrown, the tree is permitted, as lest you say that since one sank the shoot of a vine into the ground or grafted onto the tree itself, it is similar to a tree that one initially planted for idol worship, and the entire tree should be forbidden. The sages of the school of Rabbi Yanai counter this and teach us that even in this case, the tree is permitted when that which has regrown is removed. Amar Shmuel. Shmuel says, "V'shtakva le'ilan tosafte," or in brackets is tosafto, asur. Meisiv Rabbi Lazar, Gidoi v'siloi l'Avodah Zarah, v'echliv noten ma she'echliv, Gidoi v'siloi, in lo Gidoi v'siloi lo. Shmuel says, in the case of one who bows to a tree, its additional subsequent growth is forbidden. Rabbi Elazar raises an objection from the Mishnah. If one lopped or trimmed the tree for the sake of idol worship, and the tree's trunk or limbs regrew, one removes that which has regrown and burned it. This indicates that if one lopped or trimmed it, that additional growth is forbidden. But if one did not lop or trim it, even if one bowed to the tree, the growth is not forbidden. Amar lecha Shmuel hamani Rabbanan u'Shmuel amar lecha Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda de'amar ilan shenata v'sof avodah asur. The Gemara answers that Shmuel could say to you, in accordance with whose opinion is this Mishnah? It is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis who maintain that a tree that was planted and only subsequently worshipped is permitted, and it was not initially planted for idol worship. And Shmuel says his statement in accordance with the opinion of Yossi bar Yehuda, who says that a tree that is planted and subsequently worshipped is forbidden. Accordingly, bowing to a tree renders its subsequent growth forbidden. Maskiv laro ashi imai de Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda v'Rabbanan betosefet pligi. Dilma tosefet l'dirakol isu dirakol asur uvikaro pligi. Rav Ashi objects to this answer. From where is it derived that Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda and the rabbis disagree with regard to additional growth? Perhaps all agree that additional growth after the tree was worshipped is forbidden, and they disagree only with regard to its trunk. Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda ikaron nami asur dichtiv v'asherehem tisrafun v'esh v'ravan zon ikar ilan shari dichtiv v'asherehem tigadayun Eizehu ilan shigideo asur ikaros shari avyomer ilan shinatu Avodah. The Gemara explains that the nature of this dispute would be, as Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda maintains, that its trunk is also forbidden, as it is written, and you shall break down their altars, and dash in pieces their pillars, and burn their asherim with fire. Deuteronomy 12:3. Burning with fire destroys the whole tree, which indicates that the entire tree is forbidden, including its trunk. And the rabbis maintain that the tree of the trunk is permitted, as it is written, you shall break down their altars and dash in pieces their pillars and hew down their asherim and burn their graven images with fire. Deuteronomy 7:5, which is the tree whose hewn part is forbidden, but its trunk is permitted. You must say it is a tree that one planted and subsequently worshipped. And if you would say that we did not explain their opinions in the matter previously, 45b, as a source given, therefore the opinion of Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda is the same verse given here as the source for the opinion of the rabbis, simply reverse the explanation given there to match the one given here. The verse cited there as the source for the opinion of the rabbis, namely, and burn their asherim with fire, should instead be considered the source for the opinion of Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda, who deems even the trunk of a subsequent worshipped tree forbidden. And the verse cited there as the source for the opinion of Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda, namely, and hewn down their asherim, should instead be considered the source for the opinion of the rabbis that only subsequent growth is forbidden. Im kain, if so, im kain, if so, im kain, if so, im kain, if so, Gideon, Ufsilaman, Tanile, Lord of Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda. The Gemara rejects Rav Ashi's suggestion. It cannot be that all agree that additional growth is forbidden when a tree is planted and subsequently worshipped, because if so, who teaches the Mishnah that says that the tree is forbidden when one lopped it or trimmed it? It is neither the rabbis nor Yosef bar Yehuda. If one were to say that the rabbis teach it, this cannot be, as they maintain that even in a case where one did not lop it or trim it, but simply bowed to it, the additional growth is forbidden. If one were to say that Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda teaches the Mishnah, this cannot be, as he maintains that even the trunk of the tree is forbidden after it has been worshipped, and not just the subsequent growth. כי כאמר רבי יוסי בר יהודה בלא גדעו ופסילו עיקר אילן אסור בסתמה אבל גדעו ופסילו גלי עדייתה בתוספת ניחלה בעיקר אילן לא ניחלה. The Gemara responds defending Rav Ashi's suggestion. If you wish, say that the rabbis teach the Mishnah, and if you wish, say that Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda teaches it. The Gemara explains each possibility. If you wish, say that Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda teaches it as when Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda says that even in a case where one did not lop it or trim it, the trunk of the tree is nevertheless forbidden. It is only in the case where one worshipped the tree without specification, meaning not to any specific part of the tree, but if one lopped it or trimmed it. For the sake of idol worship, he has revealed his intention, namely, that he believes that the additional growth is suitable for his idol worship, but that the trunk of the tree is not suitable for his idol worship. Therefore, in such a case, only the additional growth is forbidden. The Gemara explains the other possibility. If you wish to say, the rabbis teach it. Although they maintain that even without lopping or trimming the tree, the additional growth is forbidden if it is worshipped, nevertheless, it was necessary for the Mishnah to mention the case where one lopped it or trimmed it specifically. Otherwise, it might enter your mind to say that since one performed an action on the tree itself, the trunk of the tree should also be forbidden. Therefore, the Mishnah teaches us that only the additional growth is forbidden and not the trunk. And now we start the new Mishnah. Yehoshua kol sheishtach Avodah Zarah. Rabbi Shimon omer kol she'ovdin oso u'ma'aseh b'seidon ve'imon she'ovdin oso u'matzah tachtav gal. Amar lahem Rabbi Shimon bidku et hagal hazeh ובדקו מצאו בו צורה. אמר להם, הואיל ולצורה אין עומדים, נתיר להם את האילן. Which tree is deemed forbidden as an Asherah? Any tree that has an object of idol worship beneath it. Rabbi Shimon says, any tree that people worship. And there was an incident in Sidon, involving a tree that people would worship, and Jews found beneath it a heap of stones. Rabbi Shimon said to them, examine this heap of stones, and they examined and found in it an idolatrous image. Rabbi Shimon said to them, since it is the image that they worship, we can permit the use of the tree to those who wish to derive benefit from it. And that was the Mishnah. Now for the Gemara. The Gemara says, Yehoshua Banan shalosh eros tnan. Of the Gemara. Shtayim lidei hakol. Ve'achad machloikis Rabbi Shimon v'Rabbanan. Ezo hi Asherah shenechlekuu ba Rabbi Shimon v'Chachamim kol sheyesh tachtei Avodah Zarah. Rabbi Shimon omer kol she'ovdim mutar. The Mishnah teaches which tree is an Asherah. The Gemara asks, but didn't we learn in the previous Mishnah that there are 3 types of Asherah trees? The one answer is this is what the Mishnah is saying. Of the 3 trees mentioned in the previous Mishnah, there are 2 where the trees themselves are worshipped and everyone agrees that they are forbidden, and there is one that is subject to a dispute between Rabbi Shimon and the rabbis, which is the Asherah with regard to which Rabbi Shimon and the rabbis disagree. Which is the Asherah with regard to which Rabbi Shimon and the rabbis disagree? It is any tree that has an object of idol worship beneath it, as Rabbi Shimon says that any tree that people worship is forbidden, but that a tree under which an idol was placed is not forbidden. Ezohi Asherah stam amarav kol shekumarim yoshvin tachteh ve'ein to'amin miperoteha u'shmun amar afilu amri hani tamri lebeit nitzrefi asur derami be'shichra b'shatile be'yom eidam amar ememar amru li sabe dipumbadita irchazak shmuel. The Gemara presents a question: which tree is assumed to be an Asherah, even without specific knowledge that it was worshipped? Rav says, any tree that Gentile priests sit beneath and do not taste of its fruits, as they apparently consider the fruits consecrated to the idol. And Shmuel says, even if they so much as say, these dates are for the house of Natzrifi, a house of idol worship, the tree is forbidden. This is because the idol worshippers would throw the dates into beer and drink it on their festival day. A Maimar says, the elders of Pumbedita said to me, the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Shmuel. This concludes 48a, and we shall continue. And now we turn the page to 48b with the new Mishnah after a brief interlude. Continuing, top of 48b of Tractate Avodah Zarah, sagt der Heilige Mishnah, Lo yeshev etzilo, im yashav to'er, v'lo yavar tachteo, v'mavar tomeh. Hoi sugezer zah, b'mavar tachteo to'er. That's the Mishnah. With regard to an Asherah, one may not sit in its shade. But if one sat in its shade, he remains ritually pure, and one may not pass beneath it, and if one passed beneath it, he is ritually impure. That's strange. You would think if you sit under it, you remain there for longer. So why does he stay pure? But if he just passes by it, he becomes impure. It's a counterintuitive. Anyway, if the tree was robbing the public, meaning if its branches extended over the public property and one passed beneath it, he remains pure. That makes sense. That's the Mishnah. It's the whole Mishnah. The Gemara says, "Lo yeshev etzilo pshita, amar Rabba Chana bar Yochanan, lo nitzra lo etzel etzilo." The Mishnah teaches one may not sit in its shade. The Gemara asks, isn't this obvious? He is directly benefiting from an object of idol worship. Rabba bar Chana said, Rabbi Yochanan said, it is necessary only with regard to the shade of its shade. The shade that extends as far as the height of the tree is considered its shade, the less significant shade. That which extends further, that the tree's height is referred to as the shade of its shade. The Mishnah is teaching that even this secondary shade is forbidden. Miklal, dibitzel komata, im yeshav, tam, lo, דאפילו לצל קומתה נמי אם ישב טהור, רק המשמלן, דאפילו לצל צילה לא ישב. The Gemara comments by inference with regards to the shade of its height, its primary shade. If one sat there, he is impure. The Gemara rejects this inference. No, this inference is not correct. As even with regard to the shade of its height, if one sat there, he remains pure. And this is what the Mishnah is teaching us. That even with regard to the shade of its shade, one may not sit in it. There are those who teach this discussion with regard to the latter clause of that part of the Mishnah, which states, but if one sat in its shade, he remains ritually pure. The Gemara asks, isn't this obvious? Why should he be rendered impure? Rabba bar Chana said that Rabbi Yochanan said, it is necessary only with regard to the direct shade of his height. Even in this case, he remains pure. The Gemara comments by inference, with regard to the shade of its shade, one may even sit there ab initio, which means chatchila. The Gemara answers no. This inference is not correct. Rather, this is what the Mishnah is teaching us, that even with regard to the shade of its height, if one sat there, he remains pure. My time, the Mishnah teaches, and one may not pass beneath an Asherah, and if one passed beneath it, he is ritually impure. The Gemara asks, what is the reason? The Gemara answers, because it is impossible that there is no remnant of an idolatrous offering underneath the tree. So then for sure someone should be impure if they sat under there. I don't get the Mishnah. Why is it if someone sat under it, they're not impure, but if just they passed by it? I don't know. Unless I'm not understanding something correctly, which is often the case. Okay, anyway. Mani Rabbi Yehuda ben Meser Tanya. Okay, so the Gemara asks, what is the reason? The Gemara answers, because it is impossible, there is no remnant of idolatrous offering underneath the tree. Okay, Mani Rabbi Yehuda ben Meser Tanya. Rabbi Yehuda ben Meser Omer Minan Enter Koives Avodah Zarah Shema Tamma Vohet Shenema V'yitzamdu Lebal Pa'or V'yochlu Zivchei Meitim. Ma met mitam b'ohen after krovet avodah zarah mitam b'ohen. The Gemara asks, what is the opinion? Whose opinion is this? Is it the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda ben Meter, as it is taught in the Braita, that Rabbi Yehuda ben Meter says, from where it is derived that an idolatrous offering transmits impurity to the tenant, meaning to that which is under the same roof. It is derived from that which is stated, and they join themselves unto Baal and ate the offerings to the dead. Psalms 106:28. It is derived from here that just as a corpse transmits impurity in its hand, so too an idolatrous offering transmits impurity in its hand. ועבר תחתיה טהור, יבואלו עבר עובר. רבי יצחק בן אלעזר בשמי חזקיה אמר, עובר רבי יהודה אמר, אם עבר. The Mishnah teaches if the tree was robbing the public, and one passed beneath it, he remained pure. A dilemma was raised before the sages. Does the Mishnah mean that if one passed under the tree, he remains pure, but that it is prohibited to pass beneath it ab initio, means to begin with, or lechatchila? Or does the Mishnah mean that one may pass beneath it ab initio? Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elazar says, in the name of Rabbi Chizkiah, one may pass ab initio. And Rabbi Yochanan says the Mishnah means that if one passed, he remains pure, but it is prohibited to pass ab initio, which means he can't do it just to begin with. If it happened to be that he did it, okay, but he shouldn't do it just like that. The Gemara explains that, and they do not disagree, this opinion, that one may not pass beneath an Asherah, is referring to a case when there is another way to get to his destination. That opinion, that it is permitted to pass beneath ab initio, is referring to a case where there is no other way. The Gemara relates Rav Sheshet, who was blind, was being guided by his attendant toward his city, and there was an Asherah shadowing the path. Rav Sheshet said to his attendant, when you arrive at the Asherah, have me run past it quickly. The Gemara asks, what are the circumstances? If there was no other way to get to his destination, why did Rav Sheshet request to have me run past it? In such circumstances, it is permitted to walk normally beneath an Asherah. And if there was no other way to get to his destination, and if there was another way to get to his destination, when Rav Sheshet said, have me run past it, was he then permitted for him to do so? He still passed from the Asherah. The Gemara answers, actually, it was a case where there was no other way to get to his destination. Although it was permitted for Rav Sheshet to walk normally underneath the tree, Rav Sheshet wanted to run past it because an important person is different. An important person should try to pass under the Asherah tree as quickly as possible, lest others misunderstand the circumstances and learn from it. It is permitted for one to walk underneath an Asherah tree, even when there is another way for him to reach his destination. And now we start the new Mishneh. The Mishneh Zoiren Tachteo. Yehoshua Yehoshua lo ebi moisechamu. V'azen lo ebi moisechamu lo ebi moisechshoim. Ebi Yehoshua manaf lo yirakos pimos ebi shamim. Mipnei shehanevio lo sheras aleim ahoy ve'lohem nezevet. One may plant vegetables underneath an Asherah during the rainy season, as vegetables do not benefit from its shade. On the contrary, the tree's foliage prevents the vegetables from being properly irrigated by the rain. But one may not plant vegetables under an Asherah tree during the summer, as the shade benefits them. And lettuce may not be planted there at all, neither in the summer nor in the rainy season, because shade is always beneficial to lettuce. Rabbi Yossi says one may not plant vegetables in the Asherah tree even during the rainy season, because the tree's foliage falls upon them and serves as fertilizer for them. Okay? And now, that was the Mishnah, now the Gemara. The Gemara says, the Mishnah records a dispute between Rabbi Yossi and the rabbis with regard to planting underneath an Asherah in the rainy season, when vegetables are fertilized by the tree's forbidden fallen foliage. That's a nice alliteration there. Forbidden fallen foliage. As the plant is also fertilized by the permitted nutrients of the ground. The plant's growth is caused by both prohibited and permitted sources. Therefore, the Gemara asks, is this to say that Rabbi Yossi holds that when both this and that cause, meaning when both permitted and forbidden items contribute to a result, the result is forbidden, and he therefore holds that it is prohibited to plant underneath an Asherah in the rainy season. And the rabbis say that when both this and that cause a result, the result is permitted. Ha ibcha shamin lo titzdan Rabbi Yossi Omer shachet v'zoyer leruach omei tilayam. אמרו לו, אבהינה סזבל, ונאמר, לא ידבק בידך מאומה מן החרם. Didn't we hear that they stated the opposite rulings? As we learned in the Mishnah 43b, Rabbi Yossi says, when one encounters an idol, he should grind the idol and throw the dust to the wind or cast it into the sea. The rabbi said to him, what is the good of that? That also gives a Jew benefit from the idol as it becomes fertilizer for his crops, and deriving any kind of benefit is prohibited, as it is written, and nothing out of the prescribed items shall cleave to your hand. Deuteronomy 13:18. The contradiction between the statement of the rabbis in that Mishnah and the statement of the rabbis in the Mishnah here is difficult, and the contradiction between the statement of Rabbi Yossi in that Mishnah and the statement of Rabbi Yossi here is difficult. The Gemara explains, granted, the contradiction between one statement of Rabbi Yossi and the other statement of Rabbi Yossi is not difficult. It may be resolved as follows. There in the earlier Mishnah, since the ground of idol is dispersed and is going to be completely lost, Rabbi Yossi permits deriving benefit from the fertilizer. By contrast, in the Mishnah here, where the fallen leaves are not going to be lost so quickly, as they fall together on top of the vegetables and provide direct benefit as fertilizer, deriving benefit from them is prohibited. But the contradiction between one statement of the rabbis and another statement of the rabbis is difficult. Therefore, the Gemara concludes, reverse the attribution of the statements, so that the Mishnah teaches that it is the rabbis who deem it prohibited to plant under an Asherah in the rainy season, where Rabbi Yossi deems it permitted. Lo tebuch Rabbi Yossi kid shanin Rabbi Yossi kedamar Ramani Bered Rav Kahanama Shimash biach ba'o pogim bebasal. And if you wish to say instead, do not reverse the statements. The contradiction is between the statements of Rabbi Yossi can be resolved as we answered before. The contradiction between the statements of the rabbis can be resolved in accordance with that which Rav Mari, son of Rav Kahana, says about an animal offering that became disqualified for sacrifice. The halacha is that this animal is sold and the proceeds are dedicated to the temple treasury. One may not skin the hide of the animal whole, even though this would make the hide more valuable than if it were cut up into pieces. Rav Mari, son of Rav Kahana, explained that this is because the value that is enhanced with regard to the hide is offset by the damage caused to the flesh. The process of skinning the hide devalues the animal's flesh, therefore there is no overall monetary gain for the temple treasury. Achanami ma shemashbiach benevia pogim, but said here too the value that is enhanced with regard to the planted vegetables by the foliage of the tree is offset by the damage caused by its shade. Therefore, since there is no overall benefit gained from the Asherah, the rabbis deem it permitted to plant underneath it in the winter. The Savar Rabbi Yossi Zevaze Golem Asu V'atanya Rabbi Yossi Omer Notin Yichol Shel Ola Ve'en Notin Egos Shel Ola V'pene Shehu Peri Yamar Rabbi Yehuda Amarav Mode Rabbi Yossi Shimnata Mehivrich V'hirkiv Muta. The Gemara asks, and does Rabbi Yossi hold that when both this and that cause it, meaning when both permitted and forbidden items contribute to result, are the results forbidden? But isn't it taught in the Mishnah in Orla 1.9 that Rabbi Yossi says one may plant the branch of an Orla tree, meaning a tree during the first years after its planting, despite the prohibition against eating or deriving benefit from its fruit, but one may not plant an Orla nut because it is a fruit. And Rabbi Yehuda says, or Rav says, Rabbi Yossi concedes that if one planted an Orla nut, or sank the shoot of an Orla tree into the ground, or grafted an Orla tree, deriving benefit from that which grows as a result is permitted. This is apparently because the growth is caused by both a forbidden cause, the Orla nut, and a permitted cause, the ground's nutrients. And the Gemara adds, that which Rabbi Yehuda says, that Rav says, is also taught in the Brayta. Rabbi Yossi concedes